religious, social, and marital affinities. We reiterate that no one should be used as a political channel to override and abuse the Yoruba uncommon hospitable magnanimity and take our unreserved love for good neighborliness and respect for granted.
That there is no need for PDP to feature any candidates. And I'm putting it to all PDP members across Lagos State that I, Oladoto Azan, from today henceforth, I will be joining Mr. Babajide Olushola Sanwo-Olu in steering the ship of progress under the All Progressive Congress.
We're here to actually endorse the governor of Lagos State, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and his deputy, Hamzat. So, and the only way we can do that is, for all of us to come out in mass on the 18th of March and make sure we vote wisely, we vote the right candidates.
The Center for Anti-Corruption and Open Leadership, CACOL, and the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC, have reiterated the need for politicians to create an inclusive atmosphere during the forthcoming governorship election. The chairman of CACOL, Debo Adeniran, made this known during a feedback conference which was held in Lagos on Wednesday, themed prioritizing anti-corruption and social inclusion during the 2023 governorship elections in Lagos State. Speaking further, Adeniran urged Lagos residents to hold their leaders accountable during and after the elections.
Most of the political parties actually took us seriously, and they tailored their agenda to suit the purpose of various sectors of Nigerian society. They also promised that they are going to make priority the anti-corruption agenda, that they are going to confront corruption crimes if they won election. And many of them made it part and parcel of their program and manifestos that women, youth, and disabled persons or differently abled people will be mainstreamed into whatever they are doing. We have got some of the political parties, especially the major ones, the frontliners. We've got them to assure us that even the budget process will not be done on behalf of the people. That the people at the grassroots will be made part and parcel of the budgeting process. They assured us that they are going to carry out needs assessment.
Government also needs to do more to look into communities where they have untarred roads. Even if they cannot tar every road for now, they can upgrade them and make them motorable.
Justice S.I. Okpara of the Imo State High Court, sitting in Owerri, the state capital, have on Wednesday denied the immediate past Deputy Governor of the state, Gerald Irona, bail after the prosecution argued that his bail application was filed late on Monday. The prosecutors argued that as of Wednesday morning, when the accused was arraigned, the 48 hours allowed by law to enable the prosecutors to respond on points of law subsisted. They said it would be unlawful for the judge to entertain the bail application when a counter bail application had not been filed by the prosecutors. Following the gruesome murder of the Labour Party candidate for Enugu East Senatorial District, Oyibo Chukwu, just days preceding the February 25 presidential election, a non-partisan group, Nsukka Professionals Association, have expressed regret that no arrests have been made since the incident. President of the group, Charles Nwodo, who briefed journalists on Tuesday in Lagos, by some political gladiators to cause violence during the coming governorship and State House of Assembly elections, especially in the Enugu East Senatorial District. Omodo urged the Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali Baba, to dispatch a special team of detectives to Enugu State with a mandate to seek out and apprehend all those directly connected with the crime, no matter their status or extent of connections in the society.
The brutal assassination of the Labour Party candidate for Enugu East Senatorial District in the days preceding the February 25th, 2023 elections by individuals who are yet to be apprehended. We are appalled that no arrests have been made and no suspects have been interrogated by the security agencies to date. The Inspector General of Police is implored to dispatch a special team of detectives to Enugu State with a mandate to seek out and apprehend all those directly or indirectly connected with this heinous crime, no matter their status or extent of connections in the society. The Nsukka Professional Associations announces a donation of 1 million naira to the family of the slain politician in humanitarian solidarity for their grief, along with all persons of goodwill in Enugu State and Nigeria. It is our resolve to ensure that this crime is thoroughly investigated and justice served on the guilty in accordance with our laws. B. Reports of violence and electoral malpractices. Credible reports of plans by desperate politicians in Enugu State to compromise key officials of INEC, the Nigeria Police Force, the Nigeria Army, and other security agencies in Enugu State, with a view to frustrate the conduct of free, fair, and credible elections. We are informed that an INEC Enugu State official, Mrs. Ife Naono, has been specifically accused of being the coordinator of the plots to disenfranchise Enugu voters. We call on the chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, to immediately recuse this staff from all official activities related to the forthcoming election, so as to reinforce the credibility of the electoral process and also protect the career of this staff in the event that she is innocent of the accusation.
Take a break here, but still to come, Nigeria's inflation rate rises further to 21.91% in February 2023. We'll bring you details when we return. Welcome back. Now here's a recap of our top stories tonight. The federal government has shifted the population and housing census earlier scheduled for March 29 to a later date in May. Lai Mohammed, the Minister of Information and Culture, announced the development on Wednesday at the end of the Federal Executive Council FEC meeting presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari in Abuja. Mohammed told State House correspondents that the decision was necessitated by the rescheduling of the governorship election to March 18. We also told you that the Independent National Electoral Commission INEC has commenced the distribution of electoral materials to all polling units in readiness for the governorship and state assembly elections. Speaking during the exercise at the premises of the Central Bank of Nigeria in Osogbo branch, the State INEC Resident Electoral Commission Mutiu Adegoke assured that the commission would scale up its level of arrangement procedures and security due to the high stakes attached to the elections. In case you missed any of our news bulletins, or for more updates, you can catch us on Limex World TV or log on to our website on www.tv360nigeria.com. You can also follow us on our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at TV360 Nigeria. On Facebook, we're at TV360 Online. Nigeria is among 54 other countries with its health workforce support and safeguard list struggling with personnel shortages. According to the World Health Organization, the impact of COVID-19 and widespread health workers in these countries continue to seek better paid opportunities in wealthier countries. The affected countries have universal health coverage index of below 55 and a health workforce density below the global median of 49 medical doctors, nursing and midwifery personnel per 10,000 people. WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus said the list should be used to inform advocacy, policy dialogue at all levels, and financing efforts in support of health workforce, education, and employment in these countries. We'll take another break and return with business updates. Stay with us. Welcome back. Mary Kanu joins us now with updates in business. Over to you now, Mary.
Thank you, Simisola. Hello and welcome to Business News. The National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, says the country's headline inflation rate rose to 21.91% in February 2023 compared to 21.82% of January 2023, indicating an increase of 0.09% points. The inflation rate data is contained in the latest CPI report released on Wednesday by the NBS. The report comes as the country attempts to bounce back from months of naira scarcity occasioned by the naira redesign policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria, first announced on October 26, 2022. The NBS added that on a month-on-month basis, the percentage change in the all items index in February 2023 was 1.71%, which was 0.16 percentage points lower than the rate recorded in January 2023. The International Air Transport Association has disclosed that the trapped funds belonging to foreign airlines operating in Nigeria have risen by 12.39% to $743 million in January 2023 from $662 million in the corresponding period last year. IATA disclosed this in a letter addressed to the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, signed by the Area Manager West and Central Africa, Samson Fatokun. The association urged the minister to intervene and ensure the resolution of the issue of airlines' blocked funds in Nigeria. We'll take a break and return with stock market report. And for the third time this week, equities trading on the floor of the Nigerian Exchange Group closed in the red zone as investors sold mostly the shares of United Capital PLC and University Press alongside 17 other equities. Now increased activities on the sell side of the bourse pushed further south the market's benchmark performance index by 0.42% to close at 55,490 basis points. Investors lost 127 billion naira as market capitalization closed at 30.2 trillion naira. Now compared with the previous trading day, today's data shows 181 million volume of shares were traded in 3,908 deals. A switch now to the global scene. It's not a good trading day in the US and UK. The FTSE has plummeted to a 3-month low ahead of Chancellor Jeremy Hunt's spring budget. The FTSE is down at 3.49%, while the Dow Jones is also down at 1.9%. 0.74% as pressure on the financial sector increased the shares of Credit Suisse, a Swiss bank that has large U.S. and global operations, tumbling down more than 15%. And that's the stock market report. Simisola, back to you.
Thank you, Mary, for that update. And in Malawi, rescuers are still struggling to reach survivors in the country's battered city of Blantyre after Cyclone Freddy struck southern Africa for a second time, triggering floods and landslides that have killed more than 240 people across 2 countries. Red Cross Malawi spokesman Felix Washon told newsmen they have been hoisting and rooftops. Rescue workers in Malawi also warned that more victims were to be expected as they searched destroyed neighborhoods for survivors as thunderstorms persist and flood levels remained high in some areas, hampering emergency efforts. Authorities in neighboring Mozambique have so far reported 21 deaths, and the death toll there is expected to rise. In sports, Morocco will join Spain and Portugal in a bid to host the 2030 World Cup. The announcement on Tuesday was made through a statement signed by King Mohammed VI and read at a meeting of the Confederation of African Football. Morocco committed to taking part in the 2030 bid more than 4 years ago, immediately after losing the vote for the 2026 tournament, and was in talks with the Iberian nations for a while, but had never been officially included in the bid. Last October, Spain and Portugal were joined in the long-standing European candidacy by Ukraine, which is not likely to remain in the bid. Well, that's our bulletin this evening. Many thanks for watching. I am Simisola Ajiko.
Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the President of the Federal Republic.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa Forest.
On TV360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians say in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
TV360, dissecting the issues.
Whether you call it democracy or election result different from the real one, or transmission, transfusion, transition different from transparency. You are not far from the truth, but I hope the government will truly be a town hall different from Bala Blue. In 2007, late President Yar'Adua, in his inaugural speech, admitted that the election that brought him to office was far from being perfect, and subsequently set up the retired Justice Uwe's Committee on Electoral Reform. Whatever happened to the robust recommendation of that report that the appointment of INEC chairman, national commissioners, and resident electoral commissioners shouldn't be the sole prerogative of the president? Today, nobody is bothered again, and yet we expected an election different from Bala Blue. Anyway, that's our topic for another day. Even though, also, like the 2007 election, I'm aware that just like Professor Morris Iwu's promises of conducting credible election. Professor Mahmoud Yakub's promises along the same line fell even lower than the expectations of Nigeria. However, because of the constitutional presumption of regularity in favor of INEC result as declared, I therefore congratulate everyone that has received a certificate of return, including Mr. President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu, while hailing the courage and resilience of those that have proceeded to the tribunal. I say at the end of the day, may Nigeria win. I've seen videos of the president-elect visiting captains of industries, former military leaders, and some traditional rulers, either with his certificate or without. But I want to urge him also to extend this visit to both Christians and Muslim clerics in the South because of the fears entertained in some quarters over his Muslim ticket. Because we certainly cannot shy away from the fact that our country has been so fractured along religious, tribal, and language fault lines, which also is patently reflected in not only our national life, but showed massively in the voting pattern and the complaint thereafter. Let him not be like Buhari, who promised to belong to everybody and nobody, but ended up allegedly belonging to nobody but a few certain cabals. Anyway, no be me talker. While Tinubu is on his visit, I hope he has selected his team. He should immediately set out his economic team to ensure timely realization of his blueprint and realizable action plans and programs with actualization dates and timeline to enable us follow up and also determine KPI as he has promised to hit the ground running. Make it not be like Buhari when he hit the ground and started running away from the ground. Well, since Buhari is hardly aware of anything, I also hope he should be aware that there's massive suffering in the land occasioned by his party's failure to fulfill their promises to the people. Even though his party no agree say they failed. But at least now, the intentional decapitalization policy of Emefiele's CBN has for once united both the politicians and the people as complainants. Everybody complain, no money. Even as the Naira is falling headlong and the country has become so unsafe to live. So he should put aside politics and strive to truly protect and provide for both those that gave him 95% vote and those that gave him 7% vote, if you know what I mean. He need not be told that the country needs to diversify its economy away from oil now more than ever before and truly ensure that NNPC is in words and in deed a profit-making ventures like the Saudi Arabia Aramco oil companies that just posted a profit of $161 billion in 2012. 2012, I mean to say. Also, with the prevailing economic hardship and the feeding bottle system of government we run, where states run to Abuja to share money every month, the reformation of the concurrent and exclusive legislative list and enhanced general welfare of the people deserve his urgent attention now more than ever before. We also cannot overflog the fact that his government need to create massive employment for our teeming youthful population and find way to not only export cassava, agbado, grains, and other agricultural produce, but also provide electricity that will enhance processing of these goods, boost food availability, industrial job creation, and improve manufacturing. Lastly, his government needs to ensure a statutory declaration that will ensure gender equality and participation in government, improve the security of lives and properties, and foster a truly renewed hope different from Balablo. May I also draw his attention to the fact that the undermentioned critical areas of our national lives need serious attention and revamping like yesterday. The Land Use Act, elevation of the value and dignity of the lives of every Nigerian above its current parlor state, fiscal federalism, state policing, fuel subsidy, our population census, local government, legislative and judicial autonomy, separation of religion from the state, issues of terrorism, kidnapping, open grazing and banditry. You name it. Don't just tell me the list is too much. Add your own as the team. Plenty. After all, he begged for the job. I will therefore advocate that until the incoming government builds bridges to unite, diversify the economy, and rekindle true hope in the people, and the people also putting their government on their toes to deliver on their campaign promises, Soon, we will not only be talking about a town hall different from Bala Blue, but our country will not be different from a Bala Blue. However, irrespective of our misgiving, we must collectively push, pressure, and work to make Nigerians succeed. Anyway, make I stop here for now until next week. But don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms showing on your screen and let us know if you agree or disagree with us. But in all, let's always be decorous. Lastly, I leave you with this. Never be afraid of your government. Instead, let the government be afraid of you. See you next week.
Hello and welcome to another edition of What's Your Take? I am Dayo Akintobi and it's a pleasure to be with you here again this glorious Monday morning. And how has your week been? This has been a very interesting week on the landscape of Nigeria, especially to do with politics. We saw, first of all, the postponement of the governorship elections by 1 week by the electoral umpire. We'll talk about that as we get into the show. And of course, we also saw all kinds of developments during the week in terms of people scrambling to try and meet up with the political activity. We saw governorship candidates eating ice cream with commoners. We heard of another governor who drinks 40-year-old whiskey at 9 a.m. in the morning. I mean, it's just been all kinds of stuff. There's also been tragedy as well. There was the sad story of a journalist in Ibadan who, because he didn't have cash, was walking, had to trek to his radio station and slumped along the way and lost his life. That's another casualty of the Naira redesign policy. So we've got that and a whole bunch of other interesting stories. We've got a guest in the studio who will also join me to analyze those major stories that made the headlines last week. And we'll take it from there. As with me, as always, is my trusty sidekick and newscaster, Yetunde Afolabi. Yetunde, how are you today?
Good morning, Dayo. I'm very well, thank you.
Good to see you. How was your weekend?
My weekend was relaxing. It was quiet.
Anything interesting happen your way?
Not really.
Well, no. In my neck of the woods, the funny thing is, the only big news was that the guys who had planned to play football in the streets on Saturday were disappointed. They had planned all kinds of league matches. You know that because during the elections, there's restriction of movement, so there's no cars moving. So in my neighborhood, the streets become football pitches. So the only complaints I heard during the week was the young lads who had planned to play football on the street, who suddenly found out, they had to cancel their plans because cars were everywhere on Saturday because there was no election. Anyway, so how's the cashless thing doing you as well? Have you been able to get over this not having Naira? How have you sorted out not having cash?
I think I'm starting to adapt to the fact that cash is gold right now. So I'm tending towards the bank apps and the online, banking system.
Are all the vendors you deal with taking transfers and POS? Because I'm aware that a young lad around my house tried to go and buy bread and tried to go and buy plantain a few days ago, and they simply said they don't accept transfers.
I've luckily been able to swivel my way around. So I've seen bread sellers that accept transfers, petty traders that accept transfers as well. So I'm quite lucky, I would say.
Okay, well, let's hope all of the rest of Nigeria is as lucky, or in the alternative, maybe the CBN will comply with the Supreme Court's directive one of these days and let us begin to see cash. Let cash flow, both the old notes, the new notes, let it flow nicely. But we'll talk about that in the program as we go along. So let me introduce my guest. Joining me to take a look at the big stories that made the headlines last week is Michael Adebowale. Michael is the Social Secretary of the National Youth Council of Nigeria, Koshofe chapter. Michael also serves as the Sergeant at Arms, Youth Assembly of Nigeria, Lagos State chapter. Welcome to What's Your Take, Michael. You have a very rich resume in youth organizations. Might you be planning on getting involved in politics down the road?
It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm glad I could make it.
Yes, we're very happy to have you, and we look forward to a robust and engaging time talking about the big headlines of the week. As we know, the future belongs to the youth. Nigeria already is transitioning from us old soldiers to the next guard, which is the youth, and they're already coming into reckoning. So I'm glad to have Michael with us today to give us the youth perspective on the major stories that are making the headlines in Nigeria today and throughout last week. All right, over to you yesterday. What do you have for us to talk about first?
INEC postpones governorship, other elections for BVAS reconfiguration. Results viewing portal, IREV, now working, ready for governorship polls, says INEC. In addition, the Electoral Commission says reconfiguration of the BVAS machine ends today, Monday the 13th, and promises the technology will work seamlessly next Saturday for the governorship and state houses of assembly elections. Over to you, Dio.
Michael, how do you see this postponement of the governorship elections? Was it the right thing to do by INEC? Has it kind of destabilized the whole electioneering process? Has it put some candidates at a disadvantage? Has it put others at an advantage? What do you think? Was the postponement a good thing?
Yeah, I think the postponement was a good thing. Looking at the last elections and look at what played out. No party or no party candidate will have any excuse now. Also for INEC too, they will not have any excuse to give concerning the election result. So I think they just use that 1 week extension to perfect all their plans, and hopefully after the elections won't have any disgruntled persons, complaining about the result of the elections.
So when you talk about disgruntled persons, are you saying that the first election left a lot of people disgruntled? Do you agree with that the first election didn't meet up to expectations and left a lot of people disgruntled?
To me, from my own perspective, I won't say it didn't meet up. I just felt that the people who lost out just wanted something to hold on to, as a reason for their loss.
But INEC has admitted that the BVAS didn't upload results. Are you saying the electronic transmission of results is meaningless and doing it the manual way is okay?
No. If you look at the true state of the matter, the only reason why the BVAS was supposed to upload results to the server was for people like you and I to gain access to it. Not just only the people who, were to be voted for everybody. And to me, why I don't see anything wrong in it is we had party agents from each party who had different polling units, who had result sheets, and they all signed. And that was the same result sheet that was taken to Abuja. So you now coming to complain about the results because it was not uploaded has not been correct. I think you're just trying to.
So what you're saying is, as long as the results tally, even if it was not uploaded electronically, as long as what was signed by the party agents at the polling unit tallies with what INEC declared in Abuja, what's the issue? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because we all live in a world of technologies, and somehow we always have technology glitches.
Yes.
So an INEC came out to say that the server was attacked 62 times.
Okay.
So it wasn't safe for them to upload the results into the server. Okay. So I think that's quite understandable.
Yes, indeed. I mean, no technology is perfect, but nonetheless, the point is that INEC promised before the election that its technology would work seamlessly. It also issued guidelines in accordance with the Electoral Act 2022, and its guidelines stated that electronic transmission of results would be the way they would do this thing. And that has, of course, opened the door to challenges based on the fact that they didn't do that.
Also, the Electoral Act also stipulates that INEC can decide how they want to announce results, manually or electronically.
Yes.
It wasn't compulsory.
Okay.
They only did that, you know, to make things easier.
Or more transparent.
Yes.
And more credible.
Will I say transparent? I don't think transparency is an issue here. Because, like I said earlier, the results with all the party agents.
Yes.
So it's just, we came into a place to listen to results we already have.
Yes.
And I remember doing the electoral, no, the INEC, you know, collation of the results.
Yes.
Somebody from, I think, I forgot the party, stood up to complain. And the response from the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmood, was, you have the results with you. As these results are being collated, if you have any issues, stand up and talk.
Spoken like a true politician, perhaps said there's politics in Michael's future here. But nonetheless, I think the major issue about whether the results tally between what was at the polling unit and signed by party agents and what was declared by INEC, I think that's secondary. Even though, yes, party agents, but how about the electorate, the voters, who are the ultimate arbiter? They are the ones who are now kind of shortchanged by virtue of the fact that the way it was promised to be done was not done and has created a trust deficit and some measure of suspicion. So the burden of proof now is on INEC to show that despite the failure of its promised methodology, that there's integrity in the results it declared. I think the burden of proof on that is on INEC. All right, Yetunde, what do you have for us next?
Presidential poll. PDP governors, leaders protest at INEC head office in Abuja. Insist elections were flawed. PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar demands results cancellation. What's your take on this, Dio?
Well, my take on this simply is that that's part of democracy. We have the freedom to dissent or to not agree. And the way to express disgruntlement is to go to the court, which is what I believe the PDP has said is going to do and the Labour Party has said is going to do. Calling for cancellation of the elections, well, it's easy to call for anything you like. At the end of the day, it's going to be up to the courts as to what they do. But let's hear what Michael thinks about what Atiku is asking for. It seems like he's directed his comments at INEC because obviously if he's going to direct it at the courts, he would do it through a brief or an application he files at the court. What do you think about this whole PDP protest? We saw them in black t-shirts last week marching to INEC office. It was a peaceful protest. It was a protest of disagreement, disgruntlement, dissatisfaction. And in the aftermath of that, Atiku now called for the cancellation of the elections. What do you think, Michael?
I think the first thing I'll first say is you don't come out and say you want to cancel results. This is an election that took a lot of process, the planning, the financial aspect, and you come out to say it should be canceled. I don't think that's the best.
What happens if you are not satisfied with the results?
These are results. They should be recounted if you feel the results are not right. And looking at these elections, we had the presidential elections, the House of Rep elections, and the Senate elections all held the same day. If you are going to vote that day, you'll be given 3 sheets.
Yes.
And at the same time, you're going to vote.
Yes.
So why are you after the presidential election? Was it possible for INEC officials to rig only the presidential and leave the House of Rep? So this is my own personal opinion. So I find it quite strange. They didn't contest the House of Reps results. They did not contest the senatorial results. So why the presidential election? So like people have said, I've been watching TV, I've been listening to radio programs, and most of the lawyers, the sons we have in this country, have said the best place to go to is the court. And I know for sure the court would want to go back and look at the results and will not ask for cancellation of the results.
The court will, yes, definitely look at the evidence that's placed before it and use it to determine. I think they say the standard that the court adopts is that did the lapses or the shortcomings of the election lead to a substantial difference in what the outcome of the results would have been. If they find it wouldn't have made a difference whatsoever, whether it was BVAS failure, whether it was voter intimidation, voter suppression, whether it was stealing of ballot boxes and BVASs, whatever the causes of the lapses may have been, if the evidence does not prove that those lapses did not materially change the outcome of the results, then there's no case.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Exactly.
Indeed. Interesting. Well, it'll be interesting to see because the Labour Party also is contesting the outcome. And they have also said they are going to court. Matter of fact, I think I read today that Labour Party said they are going to have a protest. They are going to occupy all INEC offices in the country as a means of protest. What do you think of that?
Well, to me that's funny because I'm not trying to mock any party, but we've seen in the past that most of these protests lead to nothing. The best place is still the court. Well, I was even looking at the Atiku protest. These guys were less than 100. And some of them claim to be from different organizations. And from investigations, we found out that they are party members of this disgruntled party. And according to the news, the Supreme Court has given the Labour Party some candidates, Mr. Peter Obi, and his entourage, access to go and inspect the election materials. So let's see what the outcome will be, because I saw Peter Obi on TV saying he won the elections and he's going to prove it. So we are waiting. Yes, we wait and we see. It will be very interesting. It will be interesting to see. It's interesting days ahead, long days still, but let's see how it all plays out in the interest of democracy and Nigeria. All right, Yetne, let's move on.
Supreme Court order on old notes. Banks in partial compliance begin skeletal recirculation. Deposit money banks in the country have begun partial compliance with the Supreme Court's order approving the use of old 1,000, 500, and 200 Naira notes as legal tender till December 31st, 2023. The court has said that the federal government's Naira redesign policy contravened the 1999 Constitution. Meanwhile, few banks paid out the old notes during the week, while others were awaiting directives from the CBN, which remained silent. Most ATMs remained dry, while skeptical bank customers and traders rejected the old notes. As rejection of the old Naira notes spreads, reports say the economy has shed 20 trillion Naira as the Naira redesign policy has weakened productivity and emasculated small and medium-scale enterprises across the country. What's your guest's take on the Naira crisis, Dio?
Well, Michael, money, 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 no money in the pocket, no money in the hand, no money in the wallet, no money, but money in the bank account. How do you, okay, so the bank started giving out the old 1,500 Naira note last week. The CBN hasn't spoken up, the presidency hasn't spoken up, but the Supreme Court has said those notes remain legal tender till December 31. But the CBN, who is the regulator of the banks, hasn't said anything till now. So some banks are still saying, our Oga has not spoken, we can't do anything. And even the ones that are doing, they are giving out very small quantities, and many consumers are not even accepting them because they say the traders won't accept them in the marketplace, transporters won't accept them. So we are still caught between a rock and a hard place. We are still in limbo and people are suffering. How do you see this whole money problem? And this is what I call in my own terms, partial anarchy. Partial anarchy. Exactly. This is a disrespect to our legal system. Disrespect by who? I think by the people playing the business and the banking sector. I think, like I was telling my students, I said, right now in my mind, I know there has been a cartel that has decided to make money
from this crisis. Because, yes, we have the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative, here at play. Now the judiciary has said, spend this money. The old notes, the new notes, side by side. Now, the executive, who is supposed to enforce it, is mute on it.
Can the Supreme Court order the executive? Are you saying the Supreme Court is more powerful than the executive?
I'm not saying powerful, but in my own understanding, I think they are almost at par.
So if they are at par, how can one tell the other what to do?
Because it is its duty to do that. There's a dispute between people based on this crisis, and they've gone to court, and the court has said, okay, till December 31st, both old notes and new notes remains legal tender. We don't even need the CBN governor to come out and say anything. The law or the order is meant to be just obeyed outrightly. But because of how things have been in the past, people are waiting for Mr. Godwin Emefiele to come out and say something. He's not saying anything. And it's to me, this anti-people policy. Because you've done something which you told us will help us, now it's not hurting us.
Well, we read that 20 trillion has evaporated from Nigeria's economy. The economy has basically ground to a halt. I mean, there's almost zero trading activity going on now, and even people's ability to meet their daily requirements of clothing, shelter, movement, all that is severely truncated. So when you say the CBN governor is not speaking out, should the banks just go ahead and ignore him and meet their obligations to their customers? After all, this money in the banks belongs to the people.
Like what I said there are people in the banking sector, who decided to make money from this. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he told me, he needed cash to run his business. And so I said, okay, I'll introduce you to somebody. He got to the person's office and met hundreds of new notes lying on the floor. This person was supplying this money to POS merchants.
But the CBN as the regulator, can they police the sector? Or are you saying the CBN is complicit in the underhand making of money from this?
Of course. Who prints money? It's the CBN. So definitely, the CBN is the number one person or number one institution who is aiding and abetting this POS merchant. Okay, when I was coming out, I needed cash. I didn't have cash. Most of my transactions, has been transferred. And I told the lady, I need 5,000. She said, can't get up to 5,000. I'm giving you 2,000. I said, just give it to me. And I noticed that all of us that came there, nobody could get above 1,000, 2,000. So definitely it means the lady will be with up to like 100,000 cash. But just because she's giving out 2,000 for 600.
How much did you have to pay for that?
600.
600 to get 2,000. So we're having to buy our own money now.
In fact,
wow.
Very, very, very painful.
Very, very painful. The thing, the major thing though, is that it's gotten to a point now where the CBN needs to speak up, because despite the Supreme Court ruling, people are still hesitant because people are scared that suppose this money becomes obsolete in my hand, it's only the CBN really that can give value to the money at the end of the day. If the CBN refuses to collect it, the money becomes useless in people's hands. So traders are not collecting it, consumers are not collecting it from the banks. So CBN really, we encourage the CBN, say something, stand up, look Nigerian people in the eye today and say something so that our lives can start back up again. We've been comatose for too long. Thank you, CBN. Yesterday, next.
Anger as gunmen kill 35 in Katsina, Kaduna. No fewer than 18 people were feared killed on Saturday evening in Katsina State when terrorists clashed with local security guards. This is just as the death toll of Saturday night's attack in Kaduna State rose to 17 in an incident that pitted cow herders against local farmers. Dio, we haven't heard of these types of attacks in quite a while. Are they back again?
Let me throw that question to you, Michael. I mean, it's been quiet for a while in terms of insecurity, these cow herders and farmer clashes and bandits, or maybe we've just been distracted by politics in the last few weeks to where we've overlooked or ignored those stories. But it seems like things have calmed down a little bit in terms of this insecurity issue. Maybe it's that the army has stepped up with those Super Tucano jets. They've been able to penetrate Sambisa Forest and all these other places. But now, in the last week, there have been 3 or 4 incidents. Look at this one in Katsina and Kaduna. How do you see this? Are these attacks back again? And if they are, what do you think needs to be done that hasn't already been done?
Okay, like you said, for a while, we've not heard of these attacks.
Yes.
And when I was reading through the story, I found that there was a wedding where these terrorists came to attend the wedding of a fellow terrorist. And something happened, there was a clash. And it was that clash that escalated into what we're seeing now. It just goes to show that, like what you said, everything had calmed down. But we still have porous borders. I was reading an article where I looked at a picture of a border between Nigeria and Cameroon. It's just, I put it, there was no fence, nothing. You could just step into Cameroon, and how many step back into Nigeria. So these guys come in and go out freely. And because of just a small clash, that's what has happened. So I think the government needs to fight all this in once and for all.
Police our borders?
Yes.
Okay, so you believe that most of this is foreign infiltration? You don't think it's homegrown, local people doing this?
Where I was living, where I was staying before, I had a chat with the security man. He's from the north. And he told me that these guys are actually people they know. Because it's just like 2 border towns.
I see.
So they know them. And it's just like, he told me, it's not like you don't see your younger brother for a while. And he comes back. You chat him and you know what's up. So these guys come into Nigeria and out of Nigeria easily. They are mercenaries. They are being paid. So the government needs to work on our borders. And especially in the northern part of Nigeria.
Well, it might sound like cold comfort, but the bottom line is that the army is the one that is responsible for territorial integrity. So if they are really coming from across the border, then the army is actually empowered to go and take the fight to them. Army is not supposed to fight internal insurgencies, really, or anything internal. It's supposed to defend our territorial integrity. So if you are correct that these people are coming from across the border, that gives the army the local standing to go ahead and take the battle to them, and we hope the army will do that in coming days. Okay, Yedne, our last story. We are fast running out of time. So tell us about this disaster that happened in Lagos a few days ago between a train and a bus.
Okay. 6 Lagos workers die. Others injured after train-bus collide. The Nigerian Railway Corporation, NRC, and the Lagos State Emergency Management Authority, LASEMA, have blamed the driver of the bus for the accident, and the federal government has ordered a probe. According to the government agencies, the bus driver was reckless and ignored safety warnings by railway staff. Okay. Families and Good Samaritans donate blood as 29 critically injured victims battle for survival. The Lagos State University Teaching Hospital has said there are still 43 victims of Thursday's train bus accident on admission in its facilities. LASUTH had on Thursday said it received 102 victims of the train bus crash for treatment. The Ministry of Health, in a statement on Sunday titled Updates on the Bus Train Accident in Lagos as at Sunday, 12 March 2023, explained that 53 victims had been discharged as of March 12. What's your take on this, Dio?
Well, 102 passengers seems like a lot of people to be on a bus, but my understanding is that a lot of people who would have taken public transport to work didn't have cash and opted to go in the free state transportation provided by the Lagos state government, and that's why there were that many people in the bus. So here we are again seeing this Naira redesign policy creating havoc and extinguishing innocent Nigerian lives. So back to CBN governor again. Speak up today, Mr. Emefiele. Last word from you, Michael, on this crash between the bus and the train. From a transport perspective, how could it have been avoided?
Yes, last week Thursday was a Black Thursday for Lagos State, and it's very painful that these people had to just end their lives, all because of the mistake of one person. According to the news report, the train was coming and the bus was flagged down to stop, but he thought he could quickly pass through
before the train came.
Before the train, and maybe some mechanical issues happened, and unfortunately the bus could not go, and that's when the collision happened. 2 people died on the spot, and 4 died
subsequently
and go to the hospital. So I think the driver is just the one to take the blame. He has been apologizing to everybody, but so painful. It could have been avoided, and this is common with most of our drivers. We are still yet to, have a society that obeys traffic law. In Senate climes, if you have the red light stopping you, even though there are no cars,
you still stop.
You still stop.
You don't dare go.
You don't go. You don't even go. But here in Nigeria, they just look, okay, there's no car coming, no car going, let me just go. So it was very painful that his act led
to loss of human life. And that's where we're going to have to leave it for today. We thank Michael Adebowale for joining us. If he's an exemplar of what Nigeria's youth is all about, then the future is very bright for Nigeria, because Michael has been very articulate and incisive with his analysis of the various news stories today. So once again, I thank you for joining us. My name is Dayo Akintobi. We look forward to seeing you again on the next edition of What's Your Take? Have a good day.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Ecosphere. I am Mary Kanu. A historic deal was struck at the United Nations COP27 summit that will see rich nations pay poorer countries for the damage and economic losses caused by climate change. Now, this is good news as it ends almost 30 years of waiting by nations facing huge climate impacts. But developed nations were left dissatisfied over progress on cutting fossil fuels. This year's talks in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, came close to collapse and eventually overran by 2 days. But the loss and damage deal could be the most significant development since the Paris Agreement. Now, to give better insight into what this deal means for developing nations is Desmond Majakodumi, environmental expert. Thank you very much for joining me on the program. This deal has been called many names. It has been called historic, but what are your views on the deal in terms of the compromises made and your doubts around the deal?
Well, there are a lot of positives. One of the biggest positives to my mind is that the Africans were able to, come together with a unified voice and, demand from the industrialized, developed world compensation for the terrible damage that has been done in the process of industrialization. And this was very, very encouraging. There were some good voices of support coming from some of the Western leaders, like the Secretary General of the United Nations, like Al Gore, the former Vice President of the United States, who is a very, very strong climate advocate against climate damage, climate change, and all that. So that was very, very encouraging. However, the reality is that it's not enough. And in fact, these funds were dedicated specifically for adaptation, that is, amelioration of the damage that has been caused and to adapt ourselves to the problems of extra flooding, desertification, and all this sort of thing. However, you wouldn't need to be applying massive amounts of adaptation funds to vulnerable countries, especially in Africa, if they listened to the science decades ago, or even 15 years ago. And the science was saying that we are causing irreparable damage to our life support system. Let me repeat that. Irreparable damage to our life support system. Okay? That's what the science was unequivocally saying decades ago. And that we need to stop causing that damage. The major aspect of it being this massive amounts, hundreds of millions of tons of a particular greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide, into the atmosphere. Well, the scientists said it, but the world didn't listen. And we just continued pumping and pumping and pumping these hundreds of millions of tons of CO2 greenhouse gas into the atmosphere, and then the damage started to come. And this is what the funds are now for, to help us to be able to manage the damage. And that's not enough, because the cause of the damage is still on. And in fact, in the COP meeting, there were strong arguments in favor of continuing the damage. So it's extremely worrisome. And why is it so extremely worrisome? Because there comes a point in time whereby we will not be able to reverse the process. Okay? Right now, we can reverse it. We can stop it from becoming irreversible, a process that will eventually, in a matter of just decades, give catastrophic consequences. I mean, look what's happening now. Look what's happening now when we haven't even reached that particular, what they call the tipping point. It's a certain amount of heating that the Earth will reach, whereby it triggers off other releases of greenhouse gases, okay, from the methane, from ice caps, and so on and so forth. It's quite complex, but it's also very, very short, okay? So we haven't even reached there, okay? And see what is happening with the environment now. Nigeria experiencing some of the worst floods that have ever been recorded. Pakistan, likewise. The UK reaching highest temperatures that have ever been recorded, and so on. And this was all predicted by the scientists. So we haven't even reached there yet. So we need to put all our efforts to preventing ourselves from reaching there. Not just, having money to repair the damage that this will cause. Because when we reach that tipping point, there's no amount of money that is going to alleviate the problem. So in this case, it's certainly better to prevent.
Well, I know you mentioned that the financial commitments are not enough and seem to be an adaptation method, but would you say the financial commitment is the start of something that can be called a good deal to get developing nations the climate justice they deserve?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's yeah. I agree entirely. At least it's a start. It's a start, but it's a very, very late start. and they need to move a lot further forward than that. And the challenge that we're having now is that, we have a very strong argument that you people were able to industrialize by using all these fossil fuels that fast-tracked your energy requirements for industrialization, and this is what helped you to move yourselves forward in the whole process of development and so on. And now we in Africa, who you don't want us to be using our own fossil fuels. What's all that about? So there's a strong argument there. And that's why I'm saying it's not enough just to give money for adaptation. There needs to be massive amounts of money made in order to help us to transit, to go into clean energy systems. And the hypocrisy of the West, it has to be subdued. It has to be gone. This is not the time for hypocritical actions, hypocritical statements. This is a reality that humanity has never ever faced before. Okay, it's not that things are going to get a bit hot. We're going to have a few bad floods here and there. Oh, how very sad. No. Why do you think the Secretary General of the United Nations said what he said, which is that we're in a vehicle going down a road leading to climate hell and our foot is still on the accelerator? Or the one he said previous to this meeting, mankind is waging war against nature and this is suicidal because nature always fights back. He's just quoting from the science. So yeah, it's a nice little step in the right direction, but it's certainly not enough. We need to get major funding. There has to be a transformation, a societal transformation. There has to be, in fact, there is a change coming. Okay, either nature imposes that change on humanity in a catastrophic way and wipes out civilization and even threatens the very existence of humanity. I mean, species have come and gone on this earth. We are a species. We are a very advanced species in terms of the knowledge of technology and so on we have. Unfortunately, we have not been advanced enough to evolve enough to use this technology responsibly enough to stop the nonsense that we're doing, particularly against nature and our life support system. So yeah, either nature knocks us out or we have, which would be extremely painful. God forbid my children and my grandchildren have to go through that, hundreds of millions of people in internally displaced people's camps and so on. Or we ourselves have a renewal of our minds and change our attitudes and stop putting profit ahead of people and ahead of planet. That's what the armed robber does. He puts profit ahead of people. So it requires radical changes, but it is a nice step in the right direction, but we need more than a step now. We need a leap in the right direction. And that will require tremendous amounts of funding to come into our coffers so that we can transit to clean energy systems. And of course,
Well, since you mentioned the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, please give us insight into what he said about the climate being in climate emergency mode. Now, how do we get out of this mode, seeing that there are climate skeptics in Africa? Can we ever get out of this mode?
Well, the first thing we have to ask ourselves is the United Nations just one small, little, nonsensical organization? Or is it the biggest gathering, the biggest world group of nations, of all the nations of the world put together? When the UN has a General Assembly, 99% of the leaders of every nation on this planet go to that General Assembly. And if they can't make it because of some terrible circumstances in their home, they will send the highest of representatives, okay? So that is an organization to be reckoned with. On top of that, they have access to all the latest science They have access to the World Meteorological Organization. They even set up an international panel for climate change, which reviews on a constant basis all the information coming in from climate scientists all over the world. They have access to pictures from space. The Secretary General of the UN can pick up the phone and say, what was the average temperature in Lagos, Nigeria in 1973? Boom, he gets it within seconds. He can ask for a picture of the Sahara Desert 40 years ago and a picture of the Sahara Desert 40 minutes ago. Boom, he gets it like this. He is one of the top civil servants of the world. And I can assure you that there is no way a fool is going to be able to get into that position. And if you recognize that the Secretary General of the United Nations cannot be a fool, then at least you're thinking sensibly. Now, if the Secretary General of the United Nations, based on the science, the massive amounts of data and science that he has available, is warning us that we must stop the pollution immediately, and we must transit to clean energy as soon as possible, even though it will shake a few economies, but we've left it far too late, and that we must start caring far more for nature. Now, if he, a person that we acknowledge is not a fool, is giving us this advice, and we are still being skeptical and denying it, the question is, who then is the fool?
Well, I'm afraid we'll have to go on a break now. Well, we'll go on a break now, but when we return the program, we'll continue to stay with us. Welcome back on this edition of the program. We're looking at what the loss and damage deal made at COP27 means for developing nations. We still have Desmond Majekodumi, an environmentalist, on the program. Now, before we went on the break, you talked about fossil fuel, and there was talk at the summit about phasing down fossil fuel, and this elicited resistance from oil producers and big emitters. The resistance has brought up the question of if the world can ever put an end to emissions which depletes the ozone layer, or at least reduce it drastically. Do you ever see this happening?
It has to happen. It has to happen. It's like, you know, if you're in a big house with your family and the house starts to catch fire and you have your fire extinguishers, but maybe you spent a lot of money on those fire extinguishers and you don't, you know, the money, you don't want to waste your money. So you refuse to use the fire extinguishers to put out the fire. Eventually, your house will burn down and the fire will eventually go out because it's exterminated the cause of the fire. This is how serious the whole thing is. There is a timeline. We have literally between 8 to 12 years to stop this massive pollution of the atmosphere. And remember, we're talking of hundreds of millions of tons of this CO2, most of it as a result of burning the fossil fuel. If you don't believe that fossil fuel is poisonous, I wouldn't advise you to try it, but the test would be carry a small generator into your studio and spark the generator. You won't stay in the studio. So it's a no-brainer. It's something that has to be done, you know, and understandably, a lot of the nations will resist it because this is, you know, has been such a tremendous revenue source for them. And unfortunately, some of the nations, including ours, have not used that revenue judiciously, like Norway, for instance. For decades, Norway was selling oil, but invest in the oil, invest in the oil. So Norway has a massive sovereign wealth fund now. If she stopped selling oil tomorrow, she could draw down from that sovereign wealth fund and be very, very okay. Nigeria has not been able to do that. We've been able to accumulate tremendous debts instead. So there's a lot of challenges for a lot of nations that have been relying on fossil fuel. Luckily, our dear nation, Nigeria, has tremendous other resources. We have so much under the ground that the whole world needs, not to mention just our agriculture.
Well, sorry to cut you here, but some African nations have insisted they deserve to exploit natural gas reserves in order to fight poverty. Now, with Africa's level of dependence on fossil fuels, is phasing down fossil fuel good or bad news for Africa?
It is good news for the world, and Africa is part of the world. So, you know, whatever happens in Italy, in the atmosphere of Italy, can affect what's going on in Africa. Likewise, vice versa. So, yeah, phasing down. I mean, eventually what will happen is, you know, the young people of the world are waking up to this lunacy that the elders have been, you know, indulging in for far too long. The transition should have been made ages ago. And the reality is that, you know, solar power is fantastic. It's just there's been very little research done on solar cells. And I can assure you that with the way the research is going now, in no time at all, within just a few years, you'll be able to power your electric car with just a few high efficiency photovoltaic cells on the roof of the car and on the bonnet and the boot, and also the windows, because now they've developed solar cells that are like glass. They're transparent, but they're still generating electricity. The storage systems are being improved tremendously. So it's just a matter of allowing the research to be done in the clean energy systems. And we in Africa have over 400 times. We have hundreds of times more solar energy potential than we do fossil fuel potential anyway. So yeah, the phasing out is going to happen anyway. We're lucky that we still have a little window of opportunity, and the natural gas, people say it's a transition fuel. Well, if it's transmitted and if it's pulled out of the earth in a very, very good way with minimal of leakages, it is far better than burning petrol or diesel. But unfortunately, you have a lot of leakages and so on. So it's still a fuel that causes damage to the environment. And again, let's remind ourselves, we call it environment, but it is our life support system. So how can you, in your right mind, do something that is harmful to your life support system? And then this is what makes it even more pertinent. And we can even bring it into scripture, because it's not just my life support system or yours, it's our children's life support system. So on what basis can we possibly justify doing something, no matter how profitable it might be, that is going to cause irreparable, irreversible damage to my children's life support system? And why am I an adherent of any of the major religions which tell me very, very clearly that God, who created the heaven and the earth, has put us here as caretakers, as people who are supposed to replenish this earth, who are supposed to be stewards of the creation? And we're destroying the very creation that he put us in charge of, when he told us that we must love him above all else and love our neighbor. This is our expression of love to God, who has given us this miracle of creation. This is an expression of love to our children. Come on. I believe that we shall wake up from this horrendous slumber and do the right thing as soon as possible.
Now, finally, before I let you go, from the discussions at COP27, what are your views on what this year's meeting revealed to you in terms of the global commitment to curbing emissions and the obstacles we still face to progress?
It showed us that we have a long way to go. The positive side, as I said earlier, is that at least the African nations were able to come together with the support of the European Union was very supportive. So the very, very big silver lining on this terrible dark cloud is that, well, you know, humanity, you're now coming to the realization far too slowly that you have to come together as humans with a common cause, because we have a common problem that will cause catastrophic consequences against us if we continue this way. And what way are we talking about? We're talking of the negativity that we have continued to express, not just against ourselves, you know, wars and all type of terrible things against each other, but also against nature. And the difference being that nature must give you back what you give her. You sow a seed and you will harvest the fruit of that particular seed. So there's a realization now coming into humanity that, hey, we're all brothers and sisters in this one tiny little marble of a planet, a miracle of creation, and we need to live far more harmoniously with her and express far more love and care and concern for this wonderful miracle of nature. And by default, this is an expression of love and care and concern for ourselves. And we will learn through this to really become our brothers and sisters.
Well, all right, now Desmond Majakodumi, environmental expert, thank you for your contribution. Well, that's how much we can take on this edition of the program. Thank you for watching. I am Mary Kanu.
The majestic River Niger, rising from the highlands of Guinea, it meanders through many countries to Nigeria, slicing through the commercial city of Onitsha and the beautiful Asaba on her way to the Delta, where she discharges into the Gulf of Guinea in the Atlantic Ocean. Stretching to about 4,000 kilometers, River Niger is the third longest in Africa and provides livelihood to the people of the many communities on its bank. From here, they irrigate their farmlands and fish in its deep waters. Aside providing veritable mode of transportation, it is also a source of power generation. In fact, many people, particularly in Anambra and Delta states, depend on the river for their sustenance. Back in the day, canoes were the primary means of transportation on the river and served to convey goods and people from one bank to the other. But in 1965, 5 years after independence, the first Niger Bridge constructed by Dumez was completed. With the inauguration of the bridge, the main east-west connection in Nigeria was created. For Southeasterners, homecoming is everything. They return en masse at festive seasons to celebrate with kinsmen. But quite often, the frightening gridlock on the old bridge turns the homecoming trip into a nightmare. Femi Adesina recalls the harrowing experience of a friend who spent 6 hours trying to cross from one end of the bridge to the other.
That friend I had known long before now called me and said, please, what could I do? I said, what was the issue? He said he had been on the River Niger Bridge for 6 hours. 6 whole hours. He said, can I call somebody so that they can intervene and let the bridge flow? He said, 6 hours from the foot of that bridge, that when traffic flows, you can cross that bridge in 5-7 minutes. He said 6 hours they had spent on that bridge, and there was no hope that they would get to the other side.
But then there are those with more bitter tales to tell. On this same bridge, homebound families are known to have been trapped for hours and days on end.
I have slept there, so I can have a first-hand experience of the challenge. So in situations like that, it's a nightmare, because you may even come there thinking that you have stayed 1 day. Some people tell you they have stayed 2 days, especially during festivities. It's usually a very major nightmare.
Aside the nightmarish experience of the users, the bridge also poses danger to motorists as a result of the heavy load it bears.
I've had awful experiences flying through that Niger Bridge. It has been an awful experience where we have a dilapidated bridge that for so many years it has lasted. It was so dilapidated that sometimes you'd be scared that you might end up having your car get into the river. So it's an awful experience.
There has been lots and lots of tales about that place. We've had records of the bridge quivering, motorists on the bridge actually feeling the quakes and tremors from the bridge. So it was, in one way or the other, going to end up being a nightmare. It was actually a catastrophe just waiting to happen.
Now, 57 years after it was built, the second Niger Bridge is coming up quickly to alleviate the plight of the people, reduce the load on the old bridge, and boost the socio-economic potentials of the Southeast.
The bridge is very nice. It's very good. So we believe that since the new Niger Bridge have passed, we believe that development can come.
Truly, the construction of a second bridge across the River Niger had long been identified as the panacea to the seemingly intractable gridlock and frustration on the old bridge. Until 2018, it was the subject of intense politicking. While President Shehu Shagari promised to build the bridge, General Ibrahim Babangida challenged Nigerian engineers to design it. From General Sani Abacha to successive governments, nothing much was done except perhaps for President Olusegun Obasanjo, who actually flagged off the construction of the bridge on the eve of his departure in 2007. His successor, Alhaji Omar Yaradua, had a short stay in office, but ahead of the 2015 general elections, President Goodluck Jonathan performed another groundbreaking ceremony and promised to do the bridge.
I remember that clearly. I was in my office, in the Sun newspapers, on that day, and I remember crystal clear that flag off and the things that were said about that bridge. And it's amazing that nothing happened. And then the day the then President Jonathan also went to that side, I remember clearly. That's why it's baffling that after all those body movements, nothing happened.
It was being used for politics. Every 4 years, they do flag off, they do ceremony. After the flag off, they remove everything, and then the bridge is forgotten. After another 4 years, at every election period, canopies are set, and then another flag off. So that was why when the president now gave his word, knowing who he is, that he's going to do this bridge, considered it a flagship project, and then followed through. Today, we're no more talking about flag off, we're now talking of commissioning.
The era that was most significant vis-a-vis Second Niger Bridge was the 16 years of the People's Democratic Party. Anytime elections were approaching, they would go there, make some body movements as if things were going to happen concerning the Second Niger Bridge. Once elections came and they got the votes of the Southeasterners, they disappeared. The next time, when elections were coming again, they would pretend that there was movement on Second Niger Bridge, and it would fizzle out again. Then came Muhammadu Buhari, a man from the northwest of the country, from Dara. In terms of affinity with the Southeast, it's not much, except that we're all Nigerians.
Interestingly, while little was done during the period of bumper harvests from oil sales, President Muhammadu Buhari, who arrived the scene at a time of lean financial resources, became the game changer. Without the boastful promises and grandstanding of the past, President Buhari plunged headlong into the project. Today, he has succeeded where others before him failed.
I think I'm going to say it unequivocally that President Muhammadu Buhari, that is one of the greatest achievements that he has done for Nigeria. I'm not talking about Southeast, I'm talking about Nigeria as a whole. Because without that bridge, there will be no movement from Southeast to North, from Southeast to West. So even going outside Nigeria, a lot of folks that come to Aba, buy goods, come to Onitsha, buy goods, now have to transfer those goods to other nation states.
It is encouraging, it is nice to see that for the first time, we actually have an administration that has looked into that problem and preferred a real solution in the new Niger Bridge. So I think it's a positive step, one that if more of our leaders would emulate, it would make Nigeria a much better place for us to live in.
The Second Niger Bridge is an engineering marvel being executed by Julius Berger, the international construction giant. Stretching to a length of 1.6 kilometers, the bridge is equipped with a 10.3 kilometer highway. The toll plazas in both directions of the facility have 8 lanes leading to the Owerri interchange on the Onitsha-Owerri road is designed to provide direct access to the bridge from Obosi in Anambra State to Asaba in Delta. Construction of 2 secondary bridges at Amakom and Atani communities are also part of the total package.
All the 16 booths have been completed. The operation building also completed. Then the workshops and other ones, security house, they've been completed. Then the approach road on this project, we have 3 kilometers on Asaba end. Like I said, has been constructed. We only need to put the final layer of the asphalt. Then on the Onitsha end, the Anambra end, we have completed more than half of it.
On the eastern side of the bridge lies the ever-bustling Onitsha, a commercial hub that embodies the resilient and enterprising spirit of the people of the southeast. The Onitsha main market, reputed to be the largest in Africa, attracts visitors from across the continent and contributes to the hectic commercial environment of the city. As a result of the intense economic activities in Onitsha and beyond, traffic holdup on the old bridge is perpetual and frustrating. But the ongoing 7-kilometer approach road on the Onitsha side of the new facility will help to eliminate congestion and provide direct access to the second bridge. The idea is to connect the southeast and south-south regions seamlessly to the rest of the country.
You see, you are talking of a bridge that links Anambra State, Southeast, Abia, Imo, to the entire Nigeria, coming through Lagos. All right, that is the route. All the containers that come from Lagos coming to the east, that's the route they use. It's quite enormous. It's something that, if you look at the economic benefit, you get very excited. There's quite a lot we can benefit from it, and it's going to impact very positively on the economy of the Southeast.
It's going to lead to free flow of traffic. Of course, even our people who reside in other parts of the world, or in other parts of the country, once there is a period of festivities where all of our people return home to celebrate Christmas, Easter, and what have you, they will not hesitate. Most of them will come back home, and coming back home brings happiness home. Economically, economic will become viable because goods will move freely between other parts of the country and the southeast. Business will boom and everything will pick up.
On the other side of the bridge lies the serene city of Asaba, the capital of Delta State and once the colonial headquarters of the Southern Protectorate of Nigeria. Strategically located on the bank of the river, Asaba serves as the main entryway to the southeast from the Lagos axis. Here, traffic is usually heavy on its main highway, but to ease the flow and divert vehicles to the new bridge, a 3.3-kilometer approach road is also being constructed.
The second Niger Bridge is the artery between the western part and the eastern part of the country and the rest of the country. You can't quantify what it will do economically. Even apart from the economy, how about the comfort of the people? Going home at festive seasons, our brethren from east of the Niger love to travel at Easter, at Christmas, and other festive seasons. You cannot imagine the relief they will have on that bridge. They have slept on that bridge before. My friend spent 6 hours last December, but people who slept till the next day have that experience. So the relief will come for them.
President Muhammadu Buhari is a man of few words. When in 2018 he gave assurance that his administration was going to deliver the project, many people may have taken it with a pinch of salt and perhaps waved it off as a familiar story, a tale by moonlight repeatedly told by past politicians without commensurate action. 4 years after, the dream is set to become a reality.
I thank God I'm alive to see the working of that second Niger Bridge. They have gone a long way. I am happy over what I see today. They are trying. They are trying. I pray, let the Chukwu Okike Abioma guide them. So far they have gone.
It's been a subject of serious politicking over the years. So our people kind of developed a feeling that it will never come. But all of a sudden, here comes President Buhari, who now announced that he was going to do the bridge and immediately started work.
It waited this long because they made it political. Instead of really pulling up their bootstraps and working, they turned it to a political thing. That was why whenever elections were approaching, they would go there to hoodwink the people of the region to get their votes. They turned it into a political thing. But then came President Buhari, who was not interested in fooling anybody, who was not interested in the politics of it, was just interested in action.
Under this administration as well, the long-abandoned Onitsha River Port has been revived and may soon become a port of final destination for goods bound for the southeast, thereby decongesting the existing seaports in Lagos, Port Harcourt and other cities. Stakeholders are of the view that the second Niger Bridge will boost activities at the riverport and complement the multimodal transportation initiative of the administration.
Today, we talk of multimodal forms of transportation. You talk about the road, you talk about the rail, you talk about water and things like that. So this multi-approach is something that has a lot to do with impacting on the economy. So here is the Onitsha River Port that has to deal with the water, and then here is the second Niger Bridge that has to do with the roads, but both complement each other.
To ensure compliance to schedule and quality delivery, the project site has witnessed high-profile visitors lately. Aside the Minister of Works, Babatunde Fashola, who pays regular supervisory visits to the site, the Chief of Staff to the President, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, recently led top functionaries of the federal government to see the state of readiness of the bridge.
The Federal Executive Council has passed tolling policy, national tolling. National is for the nation as a whole. So which one will be concession, toll fares, and so on? That's secondary. Important. Let us finish this road.
Similarly, the Minister of Finance, Hajia Zainab Ahmad, also came calling with the Managing Director of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, Mr. Ujoji, and Chief Executives of other relevant agencies. For the Minister, it was an inspection and assessment visit to be sure the 157 billion naira so far released has been well utilized.
I can report to Mr. President and say I have seen where all the 157 billion naira has gone to. This is a project that is very dear to His Excellency the President. It is designed to uplift the lives and livelihoods of the people of the southeastern part and the southwestern part of our country.
Indeed, the transportation industry has experienced unprecedented turnaround in the past 7 years. For a critical sector that supports socio-economic growth, it's never been this good. Apart from equipping the National Inland Waterways Authority to provide navigable pathways for the movement of goods and services, stupendous amount of resources have also been committed into developing a functional rail transportation system. In addition to the second local Oweto bridges, solid road networks that crisscross the country and connect the geopolitical zones have been constructed.
When the story of the Buhari administration is to be told, of course, we will talk about the second Niger Bridge, we will talk about the Bodo Boni Bridge, we will talk about the local Oweto Bridge, we will talk about Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, we will talk about the new ultramodern airport in Lagos, the one in Kano, the one in Port Harcourt, we will talk about the new runway in Enugu, we will talk about so many things.
Just as the River Niger provides legitimate employment and sustenance for many families, construction activities at the new facility have also given jobs and livelihood to many people from the region. In addition to this legacy infrastructure, critical road projects and monuments are also being executed in the zone. Despite these huge investments, political detractors had actually tried to sell the false narrative of hatred and marginalization to some gullible natives of the area.
With the developmental strides that the president has taken to the south, it's not just the second Niger Bridge. What about the Enugu-Port Harcourt Expressway, which the president made sure that that rehabilitation of such road is completed? Other giant projects that the president has started and also completed in the southeast is an evidence that the president indeed does not hate the southeast.
Don't forget that time was when southeasterners, people of Igbo extraction, were controlling the levers of development. I'll give you an example. the Deputy Senate President from Southeast, Deputy Speaker from Southeast, Chairman Senate Committee on Works Southeast, Chairman House Committee on Works Southeast, Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy Southeast, Secretary to Government of the Federation Southeast. And all through those periods, not 1 kilometer of our roads, federal roads, that were in terrible state, not 1 kilometer was addressed. And all these people I mentioned are from Southeast. Now it took somebody else who is not from Southeast to now address this infrastructural decay. Now face the reconstruction of these roads, this critical infrastructure. Just to mention a few of the things that this administration has done in the Southeast. And then somebody goes back and says he hates Southeast. How does you demonstrate hate?
This president bears malice to nobody. And he has cared for the Southeast as much as he cares for other parts of the country.
The second Niger Bridge is an important national asset. Aside easing traffic on the old bridge, it is an inter-regional integrator with the capability of boosting economic activities and development in the Southeast. Already, the people are beginning to tap into the huge investment opportunities that come with the bridge.
You know our people, we are business people. We understand the dynamics and we take advantage of opportunities. It will bring a lot of development to the Southeast, a lot. And even South-South, because the bridge is coming from Asaba to Onitsha and vice versa. So the development is not only for South, it's also for South-South.
Truly, when the story of the Muhammadu Buhari administration is told, the second Niger Bridge will be recorded among its greatest achievements.
When President Buhari would have been done and is gone to have his due retirement, and the story is being told, what would never be forgotten will be his footprints on the sands of time in terms of infrastructure.
I met a friend on Facebook, a Zambian precisely, so we talked about migration, that's me coming over to Zambia for a good job. So I was into fumigation and clothes selling, mobile sales before I left. So when the thought came of relocating to Zambia, when I checked the economy of both countries, I found out that Zambia, though small, but their currency is quite better than Nigeria. Applied for visa, my visa was granted, I purchased my tickets, and then I left. I flew through Kenya Airline. That was on the 1st of June. I arrived Zambia on the 2nd. And then I called this my friend and I told him I'm in Zambia. So where I was, he moved me to another lodge, a hotel. And that was where I was assaulted by him. He was even dragging my passport. He wanted to get my passport, my yellow fever vaccine card. But because I hid it very far, he couldn't get access to it. He tore my bag, went away with my BTA. It's $885, and then I didn't see him. He absconded. When he left, he didn't pay the hotel bills. He had gone with my money. I couldn't find my money in my luggage. So when I noticed that things were not what we actually planned, I had to become friends with a gardener boy in that hotel. So that previous night, I was asked to move out of the hotel because he didn't pay the bills. But I noticed that he and the receptionist were in good accordance. You know, so I tried asking the researcher, did that man tell you he was going to come back? He said no, and he's owing for a night, that I can't stay in that hotel. So they had to seize my luggage, you know, seize my properties. I had to look for where to sleep. So that fateful night, I slept in an abandoned vehicle where I was almost gang raped by 3 guys. You know, I had to start this Nigerian movie. I'm with HIV, I'm with this, I'm with that, you know. So you want to, oh yeah, sleep with me and all that. So they made away with my travel documents, my return tickets and all that. They thought it was an envelope of money. So they went with it after tearing my jean and all that. But they couldn't have access to, because I started shouting. That was around 3 o'clock in the morning. I started shouting, creating scenes, so they ran away. When you leave Nigeria, and like I left genuinely, you know, but what I proposed wasn't what I got. So it was while I was in Zambia I discovered I was human trafficked, you know. So it's real, it's real. It's real. When you go, you come back, you're alive, you just say, God, I thank you, and you pick up the pieces of your life and start all over.
On the news, federal government shifts population census to May. INEC begins distribution of electoral materials for the governorship and state assembly elections. And Atiku and the PDP withdraw fresh applications against INEC. Thank you for joining us on News Now on TV360 Nigeria. I am Simisola Adigun. The federal government has shifted the population and housing census earlier scheduled for May 29 to a later date in May. Lai Mohammed, Minister of Information and Culture, announced the development on Wednesday at the end of the Federal Executive Council FEC meeting presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari in Abuja. Mohammed told State House correspondents that the decision was necessitated by the rescheduling of the gubernatorial elections to March 18. He also said that the council approved the sum of 2.8 billion naira for the National Population Commission (NPC) to procure software to be used for the conduct of the census. With just 2 days to the March 18 governorship and state assembly elections, the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) has commenced the distribution of electoral materials to all polling units. The distribution took place at the premises of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Osogbo branch, and was supervised by the State INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner Motiu Adegoke. Speaking before the commencement of the exercise, Adegoke assured that the Commission would scale up its level of arrangement, procedures and security due to the high stakes attached to the election. He said armed security operatives would be on duty at collation centers across the state, adding that operatives would also deploy more men to violent-prone areas to ensure hitch-free polls. Now, it's been 2 weeks since the presidential election took place nationwide, but despite the seeming enthusiasm of the citizens, numbers have shown that there was a low turnout of voters. Many have attributed the voter apathy to suppression, voter intimidation, and the scarcity of money and fuel. Aggrieved opposition